Hi, I'm Hana.
And I'm Ellie.
And this is EUTV's review of The Death of Stalin. So basically it's a political satire about kind of the chaos that ensued in the Soviet Union after Stalin died. So you've got loads of, the members of the party kind of vying for power. It's a really, really good cast. And so, yeah, overall it was quite funny, I'd say, and historically, I think it was pretty accurate.
I thought it was pretty accurate as well. So there's sort of four main players. The main one's Steve Buscemi, plays Nikita Khrushchev, who was the chairman of the Council of Ministers. Sort of plays himself off as a bit of a reformist throughout it.
You kind of feel like he's meant to be the hero of the story. Like, there's clearly him, the good guy, and then Bircher, who's the head of the NKVD, who's the bad guy.
It becomes increasingly blurred though, through the film.
Yeah,
who's good and who's bad, sort of through the...
But I found myself sympathizing with or rooting for Steve Buscemi quite a lot, probably because I really like Steve Buscemi, but Khrushchev was also a terrible person.
Jeffrey Tambor, who plays Malenkov, who takes over from Stalin immediately after his death. He's sort of a bizarrely naive character, quite calm, sort of...
Very narcissistic, very calm, he really wants to do Stalin's legacy proud. He reveres Stalin.
Yeah,
they all kind of
he's quite naive.
To change what Stalin's done. He's like, oh no, I don't want to do that.
And then there's Michael Palin, who plays Molotov, who was originally the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he's sort of this personification of the doublespeak of Russia. So
yeah.
I mean, he literally mentions it at one point, the sort of explaining his thought process, going through all of Stalin's usual sort of political terminology, and how if you say one thing, it can be construed in two ways depending on how people want it to be construed.
Yeah.
So he says his thought process out loud before he votes for everything, which I thought was quite interesting way
yeah,
to
he
portray
gives
him.
the two sides, and no one really knows what side he's on until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this scene where they're all voting on stuff, and he's giving reasons for or against, and everyone's just kind of raising their hand and be on the other hand. They all just kind of go down.
Simon Russell Beale, who played Bircher, who was the head of the NKVD, he was sort of the real villain of the piece. The rest of them were portrayed negatively politically, but he was portrayed very negatively in a very personable way. Very dark sort of character. All of the main characters are all men, which is obviously to be expected because it was an all-male political cabinet, but the only really major female character is Svetlana, Stalin's daughter. She's the only woman who really makes any kind of an appearance, and even she's kind of a plot device, not really a character at all.
She's there exclusively for comedy.
And I think she's also
she's just hysterical. Not hysterical as in she's super funny. She's just in hysterics.
Oh, she thinks
all
everything's
the time.
trying
and she's screaming all the time. She just is portrayed as overly emotional pawn.
Yeah, and I think also that she's a contrast to Vasily, who's Stalin's son, who's very chaotic through this movie.
Molotov's wife, who gets released from prison.
It was a huge point, and it was just sort of brushed over.
Yeah, it was a huge point that she was released, and it was just kind of ignored.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other woman, the main woman, is the piano player gal. And again, we were discussing how there was this huge threat in the middle of the movie where it was I'm going to reveal that the piano player,
wrote
sent
a note
a death
that
threat to Stalin.
May or may not have given him a heart attack.
And then
killed him.
but no one ever did anything about it. That was the end of her character. This isn't a criticism, but we kind of mentioned it before. The fact that everyone was allowed to keep their accents.
There was no homogenized accents.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm not gonna lie. For the first minute of the film, I wasn't sure if it was this is the U.S. reacting to the death of Stalin, or if because they didn't give any labels. They didn't name anyone until 5 minutes into the film, and they were using such strong American accents that I was convinced that we weren't in the part where they were in Russia yet.
It sort of works though, because Russia is such a huge geographic region, and there's Georgia and Siberia and everything, so it's sort of maybe they come from all the different parts of Russia. Although I didn't notice that, everyone that was supposed to be from the Georgian part had a British accent, because obviously Stalin was Georgian. and so were other people in the cabinet, but they were
I don't
just
think
a mix.
they tried
It was just a mix
to
of it wasn't it wasn't
differentiate.
representing different geographical regions of Russia. It was just
Just
a
main
mix,
people,
yeah. So obviously Iannucci he's known as being a very political writer. He writes Veep in
he's
the
really
loop
into
and in the thick of it.
political satire.
Yeah, and I think what's quite funny is that this follows a very similar formula, but like unlike in his other stuff, like the like retribution for the characters who are always terrible people, always awful people, is just like embarrassment or getting fired, and then it gets quite serious at the end of this one where you realise that the penalty for messing up in this Iannucci world is death.
I'd recommend it.
I would recommend it.
We're both politics and international relations students, so like that could be a little biased, but I don't think it is. I think that like especially now, like people find with like SNL doing all these political comedy sketches, like people are really into that.
I think equally it sort of fits the climate now. Russia's certainly becoming more and more relevant politically again. It's interesting to go back and see its history, which is equally mad. And yeah, I spent money to see it. I think you should as well.
Yeah.